Donetsk is being bombed. The occupiers' logistics have been destroyed. Huge columns of equipment have turned into scrap metal. Sevastopol is without power. A massive missile and drone attack on Crimea. There is no money. Mass layoffs at Russian military-industrial plants? Putin has been set up. It has become known who leaked the video of coughing Putin to the internet and why. The old man's end is near. What is happening? The internet has been shut off in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Putin spoke with Trump. The US is lifting anti-Russian sanctions. A revolt of the Z military bloggers. Bloggers are screaming about the impotence and defeat of the Black Sea Fleet. This is Impeachment, a shocking video where Trump is having sex with children. In Kazakhstan, the authorities have declared a manhunt for Russians. Mass deportations. The occupiers imprisoned a 68-year-old pensioner in the Zaporizhzhia region because she was helping the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukrainian drones and military are already in the Middle East. For the first time since the start of the war, the Russian anthem was played at the Paralympics. The beautiful Ukrainian language, spoken by millions. Ukrainian drones successfully attacked Russian military equipment right on the Donetsk-Horlivka highway, situated 50 kilometers away from the front line.
And furthermore, in addition to all of that,
at night they struck Donetsk itself. Explosions were also heard in Makivka. The strike on the occupied territory of Donetsk region was confirmed by the Special Operations Forces of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. In Makivka, front strike SSO units hit a fuel and lubricants depot. And in Donetsk,
during the late hours of the night on March 10th, front strike SSO units successfully carried out a series of strikes against a storage base, a distribution point, and a specialized supply station for fuel and lubricants in Makivka. In neighboring Donetsk, SSO drones struck the Volna 3 electronic warfare station, which the enemy used specifically to defend against UAVs by jamming control frequencies, causing drones to lose their targets or connection.
There is real panic in the rear of the Donetsk occupiers.
Unfortunately, the skies are controlled by the enemy, even deep in the rear. The video shows an enemy FPV drone attack on the pesky highway DPR. Damn, in 2023 it was safer there than it is now.
In short, things are really happening. Friendly drones once again kept the occupiers in Crimea from sleeping.
Consequently, as a direct consequence of these specific unfolding events,
successful strikes, part of Sevastopol was left without power. The occupation authorities are claiming some kind of accident. Yeah, the same kind of accident as the day before. It's called a strike. After the latest arrivals on the peninsula, a state of emergency was even declared in Sevastopol itself. In addition, the day before, 3 fire outbreaks were recorded on the Kerch Peninsula at locations where Russian air defense assets are stationed.
no, I'm afraid that is not the case.
No one was able to sleep in Russia itself either. UAVs attacked the Belgorod region. Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of you are watching us from Europe, Kazakhstan, Moldova, and even the USA. We Ukrainians are grateful for your support and proud to have such sensible viewers. Let us know in the comments below where you are watching from and whether people in your country support our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments. And now we continue. The most interesting part is coming up. Almost the entire territory of Dnipropetrovsk region has already been liberated from the Russians. The joint forces only need to finish their work in 3 small settlements and carry out a sweep in 2 more. This was stated by Major General Alexander Komarenko, chief of the main operational directorate of the General Staff.
More than 400 square kilometers of our territory have already been liberated. A slightly smaller area has been cleared of enemy personnel who had infiltrated the rear zone. Almost the entire territory of Dnipropetrovsk region has been liberated. There are still 3 small settlements to be finished and 2 more to be cleared.
Work continues in the aforementioned Alexandrovsk direction. Units of the airborne assault group eliminated 10 Russians in a short period of time, destroyed 2 enemy vehicles and 3 quad bikes. But that's not all. Already in the Alimansky direction, the pilots of Signum spectacularly destroyed 13 enemy vans. The vehicles burned together with the occupiers. In addition, a new offensive by the Ukrainian armed forces has already begun. Ukrainian troops are strengthening their defenses and delivering significant blows to the enemy. This was reported by the Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrsky. Counterattacks by the Ukrainian armed forces in the south could disrupt Russia's spring offensive. According to analysis by the American Institute for the Study of War, Ukraine's defense forces have intensified counterattacks not only in the directions of Oleksandrivka and Huliaipoli, but also in the western part of the Zaporizhzhia region.
These counterattacks have tactical, operational, and strategic effects that could disrupt Russia's planned offensive campaign in the spring-summer of 2026.
At the same time, according to Siersky, Ukrainian units are actively using drone systems, artillery, and remote mining, which allows them to gradually reduce the enemy's combat potential and disrupt its offensive plans. Earlier, American analysts stated that in February 2026, the Ukrainian army launched limited counterattacks in the western part of the Zaporizhzhia region, which continued until early March. It is quite possible that this mutually reinforced Ukraine's efforts to counterattack Russian forces in the eastern Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions. I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They are holding the front and standing up to a vast horde that greatly outnumbers them. That's why I urge everyone to support the armed forces of Ukraine. And if you're unable to do so financially, write them words of support in the comments. I know they are watching us. It's no secret that Russia has launched large-scale production of strike drones in Tatarstan. Russia is even recruiting labor migrants from Africa to assemble Shaheds. But since Russia's demands are growing, the authorities are having to bring even teenagers into military factories.
My parents are proud of me. Do you want the same?
The Alabuga Polytech College has launched an advertising campaign to attract students and teenagers to assemble Garan and Shahed drones. The students call themselves patriots and say that they earn good money for doing something important for the country.
My parents didn't understand, but I came here because I'm a patriot, and besides, I make decent money. My salary in my second year is 150,000 rubles. I plan to develop myself so that next year I can reach a managerial position and earn a salary of 350,000 rubles.
Yet another example that Russia absolutely doesn't care who it involves in the war. We don't know where kids are getting these kinds of salaries, or rather, who is promising teenagers this kind of money. Because outside of propaganda, the reality is completely different. At defense factories, not only are the salaries several times lower, they're also delayed. On top of that, workers are being laid off. And
because they cut half the staff. In fact, that's exactly what's happening at my friend's defense plant, by the way. And now the lawyers there are figuring out how to fire even more people because they need to find some kind of reason. They can't just fire them for nothing.
And it's not just bloggers talking about this, but even people from within the profession. The vice president of the Russian Union of Industrialists has stated that there is a critical situation in Russian industry. According to him, many city-forming factories have already switched employees to part-time work. And in the second half of 2026, mass layoffs will begin or the factories will shut down completely. The budgetary collapse hasn't spared the civilian sector either. In Zabaikalsky Krai, due to budget problems, teachers have started experiencing delays in salary payments. They complain that they don't even have money for food. Budgets are also being actively cut in the healthcare sector. Every fourth region in Russia has reduced healthcare spending by 10% or more. This hasn't happened at any point during the entire war. Russian propaganda is starting to fail. After 4 years of full-scale war against Ukraine, the Kremlin's mouthpieces have lost their former fervor and now do nothing but panic over Russia's failures at the front and at sea. The Black
Sea. I apologize, but our Black Sea fleet is now holed up in the bays. And generally speaking, the enemy has the advantage there because their unmanned boats, these crewless BX, are now effectively operating throughout the entire Black Sea.
War correspondent Yuri Kotonok bitterly notes the fact that Russia has been cornered in the Black Sea by a country without a navy. Despite
the upbeat reports from official channels, unfortunately, we are facing serious problems. Because after the strikes we suffered, in my opinion, the Black Sea Fleet has not fully recovered. The Black Sea Fleet still has not acquired a proper flagship again.
By flagship, I mean either the cruiser Moskva or the frigate Admiral Makarov. There have been so many flagships already at the bottom of the Black Sea or damaged that you can't even remember them all at once. They're freaking out because of problems on land. Patriot Maxim Klimov is complaining about problems with armored vehicles in the army and blames everything on the Russian Ministry of Defense.
The Auto Armored Vehicle Department. Let me remind you that the person who is personally responsible for the huge losses of equipment at the beginning of the special military operation, well, I can give just one example. Our losses in armored vehicles and personnel could have been drastically reduced if the sets of additional protection that were purchased under the 2020 to 2021 state contracts had actually been installed on the equipment. The equipment was burning in the fields, while the additional protection kits were sitting in warehouses. Just that alone, this person has still kept his position to this day.
The Z-bloggers are really going all out now. A couple more such bold revelations and a charge for discrediting the army is guaranteed. Moscow is left without communication. For the fifth day in a row, Russia's capital has been experiencing problems with communication and mobile internet. Media reports say that in the city, mobile internet is either completely unavailable or only websites included in the so-called white list can be accessed. This includes government services, Russian social networks, VKontakte and Odnoklassniki, Yandex services, marketplaces, and government agency resources. Similar problems are being reported in St. Petersburg as well.
Residents report that their messengers are not working, websites and banking apps won't open. Access is only available to the whitelisted sites. The outages coincided with a statement from the governor of the Leningrad region, Alexander Drozdenko, about the danger of drones and the possible reduction of mobile internet speed.
Restrictions have also started to be implemented in public Wi-Fi networks. And now, the most interesting part. Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, stated that the shutdowns and communication restrictions are legal. All of this is to ensure security. All
shutdowns and communication restrictions are carried out in strict accordance with current legislation. That's the first point. Information on this matter was provided in advance. You had the opportunity to as we can clearly see right here, in this example,
Russia is slowly but surely turning into North Korea. I think that after the internet, they'll ban jeans. Trump called Putin. And according to the American president, they had a very good conversation with the Russian dictator. They also talked about Ukraine. But the main focus was on the situation in the Middle East. Trump says that Putin expressed a desire to help, but the US president declined Putin's offer of assistance. And he told the bunker dictator that it would be much more useful if Russia stopped its war against Ukraine.
He said that you could be more helpful by ending the war between Ukraine and Russia. That would be more useful.
And although Trump refused Russia's help, it seems he himself is not opposed to helping Putin. Shortly after the conversation, Trump announced the lifting of sanctions. We
are lifting certain oil-related sanctions to lower prices. We have sanctions against some countries, but we are lifting these sanctions until the situation normalizes. Then, who knows, maybe we won't have to reimpose them. That's
how it is for some countries. Most likely, this also refers to Russia. There are, of course, results after the phone conversations between Trump and Putin, but they are not in our favor. And what do you think about such pandering to the Russian dictator? Another impeachment, loss of power and prison await Donald Trump if the following statement by Canadian journalist Mark Slapinski is confirmed. The US media space was shaken by the sensational claim of the journalist that there allegedly exists a video in which American President Donald Trump is having sex with children. The journalist then adds, and I quote, "They will be published and will put an end to his presidency once and for all." Let me remind you that this statement was made against the backdrop of the disclosure of new files related to the now deceased American businessman Jeffrey Epstein. Even before his death, he had been convicted for creating a network of influential people who, at his villa, committed sexual abuse, including against minors. Epstein himself was also accused of sexual abuse. It is no secret that Trump and Epstein had a friendly relationship. However, Trump denies all accusations of involvement in Epstein's crimes. Kazakhstan and Russia differ on many issues, but there is one area where their partnership has become very active. Kazakhstan does not need Russians in the country, while the Russian Federation is very eager to bring Russian men back and mobilize them. So now Kazakhstan is preparing for the mass deportation of anti-war Russians. The investigation into this criminal case began at the end of February 2026.
considering that the case involving fake temporary residence registrations is being handled not by the Migration Police but by the National Security Committee. This may indicate preparations for mass deportations based on lists coordinated with Russia and not related to a politically motivated criminal case. Human rights activists have recommended that those involved in the case urgently leave Kazakhstan, while it is still possible to do so independently, and avoid being deported to Russia.
The plan is to expel Russians for fake temporary residence registrations, which are the very basis for their stay in Kazakhstan. How far this criminal process will go remains an open question. Coughing is no longer an obstacle. Coughing is actually a good thing. The Kremlin continues to experiment with Putin's addresses and is releasing unedited greetings from the bunker dictator. What they always tried to hide is now being openly shown. But was it accidental or intentional that the human version of the address by the far from humane Putin appeared online? How is Putin's address actually recorded and which of his own people set him up? We'll tell you in this report. March 8th, Putin's traditional congratulatory address.
Dear women, I am sincerely glad to congratulate you on International Women's Day.
But this seemingly ordinary protocol video stands out sharply from the sterile Kremlin TV production. Yes, that is absolutely correct, as you mentioned.
You know, let me just go ahead and say it again, because I actually just came in, right?
Yes.
I almost started coughing. Talked a lot, it's really funny. No. Yes.
That's the traditional bunker cough, and yes, the Kremlin didn't try to hide it. Viewers were shown what is usually carefully cut out. A working take, a video with pauses and commentary. You have to admit, the human factor in videos from the Kremlin is a very rare thing, especially considering we're talking about Putin. Even Russian propagandists and Z-bloggers were genuinely surprised as soon as the unedited version of the video appeared online. They started saying that this wasn't just an editing mistake, but sabotage.
That couldn't have happened. They couldn't have failed to check it before uploading. They just couldn't have. From a systemic perspective, this is a revolt. And if you recall the recent leak about the drop in trust levels, it's hard not to think that the revolt, though ruthless, is deliberate. And the person who leaked the draft knows they'll be found out, but isn't afraid. Personally, I'm even afraid to draw any conclusions.
This is being discussed even in Kremlin offices. They say that Putin was attacked by internal enemies and traitors.
Personally, I have said more than once, including to you, that traitors and internal enemies would try to strike at Vladimir Vladimirovich to attack him. And that's exactly what happened. Those who leaked the video with the draft recording of the president's address online were clearly trying to show that he was ill and in a serious condition to undermine the trust in him from Russians and the entire world. Once again,
the Kremlin and its henchmen consider the publication of the incorrect version of the address to be a conspiracy against Putin. Well, yeah, what could be more dangerous for the country than a president who coughs? Especially since whenever Putin coughs, people immediately start burying him. Will increase. But while some treat Putin's cough as a state secret, others find something positive in it. Like, the president is real after all? And this brings us to the question of whether the unedited video was leaked accidentally or on purpose. Putin's addresses are one of the most tightly controlled television genres in Russia. They are recorded in advance with several takes carefully edited and approved at multiple levels. Given this, even the draft version of the greeting is already edited. That's the director's concept, so to speak.
If this specific situation was actually a deliberate and calculated leak of information, it would serve to clearly demonstrate that Vladimir Putin is indeed a living, breathing person. And it would further suggest that he somehow even manages to react in a normal way to certain types of basic physiological stimuli and external environmental factors. It's kind of an attempt to humanize Putin for March 8th, so to speak. The idea is not to cut or edit it, even though that could have been done. And here he is, willing to re-record just to personally and directly congratulate women.
Just like he supposedly personally visits wounded soldiers from the special military operation in hospitals. Or allegedly talks with residents of occupied Mariupol. By the way, both of these cases prove just how serious the Kremlin system is for preparing all addresses, speeches, and public appearances. And right now, we're not talking about heightened security or even about the bunker leaders' body doubles. We're talking about the crowd extras. Yes, Putin's crowd is staged and often recycled. This so-called liberator of Kherson is actually an employee of the Federal Protective Service of Russia. Here, he's a soldier, but before that, he was just a regular factory worker. And there are plenty of such characters everywhere. Putin's favorite citizens go fishing with him, attend church, and go on picnics. Or they simply have tea with the president. And most likely, we'll soon see even more of these staged extras.
And of course, these kinds of events that are being pushed there on the population, most likely they organize these with the involvement of so-called extras, agents from the Federal Protective Service, or a small circle of people who are shuttled back and forth like a gypsy caravan. So they sing here, dance there, and so on.
But let's get back to Putin's addresses. If the rough draft of the March 8th greeting was a planned action, then with the other video addresses, there were real problems. The Kremlin PR people missed something with the New Year's address. On the eve of 2026, two videos were published. In one, Putin is wearing a red tie, in the other, a black one. And although in Russia they talk about some kind of technical glitch, analysts agree that artificial intelligence was used.
In general, we analyzed Putin's New Year's video addresses in 2020, 2023, and 2025 quite thoroughly and noticed an interesting trend. On the official Kremlin website, the dictator's addresses are published every year, creating his digital avatar. In other words, the official Kremlin actively uses AI and technology to create the annual addresses. The background behind Putin is always the same, only the ties on the AI and avatars change. Perhaps that's exactly why such a situation has become possible, where it's no longer clear which avatar is real.
The Kremlin regularly puts out either poorly edited or simply inappropriate montages. After discussions about Putin's trembling hands and strange gestures in the next address, the editors glued his hands to the table. Not a single movement in 8 minutes. Or, for example, Putin waves his hand in front of a fake microphone against a backdrop of fake people. This address at the start of the full-scale war was recorded on a green screen. Here, both Putin's fear of real people and poor editing came together. A logical question arises. How is this possible, considering the budgets for television production and the number of people involved in creating such videos? It's
very simple. This is a question of whether a perfect crime or a perfect murder exists. Most likely it doesn't, because it's simply impossible to completely eliminate all the nuances and details. It's just unclear which detail might give it away. And this is such a big problem because lies inevitably come to light, especially, as I already mentioned, in the age of information technology. In
the end, even the most sterile Kremlin theater cannot hide the reality of bunker walls. The Russian occupation authorities continue to persecute Ukrainians. The day before, in the occupied territory of the Zaporizhzhia region, a pensioner, a 68-year-old woman, was sentenced to 11 years in a penal colony for providing financial assistance to the armed forces of Ukraine.
According to the investigation, in July 2023, the woman used a Ukrainian bank's mobile app installed on her phone to transfer funds from her account in support of the armed forces of Ukraine. The FSB regards such a transfer as providing financial assistance to a foreign state in activities directed against the security of the Russian Federation.
This is the second known sentence in March. The day before, the same occupation court in the Zaporizhzhia region sentenced a 71-year-old man to 10 years in a high-security penal colony. The charge is the same: financing the armed forces of Ukraine. This concerns a transfer of 3,000 hryvnias. Elderly people in the occupied territories often send money to relatives or acquaintances who are in Ukrainian-controlled territory. The occupation authorities, in turn, monitor bank transactions and may classify them as financing terrorism or high treason. Ukraine has sent drones and specialists to the Middle East to train representatives of the anti-Iranian coalition in their use. This was reported by President Zelensky. But what will Kyiv receive in return for this assistance? After all, it is known that there is a serious shortage of air defense systems to protect Ukrainian skies.
It has been 4 long years from "Please help us close the sky over Ukraine" to "Help us, the people of Ukraine."
The countries of the Middle East are not coping, nor are the Americans. Only Ukraine has proven capable of countering Iran. As a result, official Kyiv was approached for support and Ukraine did not stand aside. Ukrainian specialists are traveling together with countermeasures to the countries of the Persian Gulf.
We understand what is happening, what kind of war is going on there. We discussed some details regarding the strikes on the Gulf countries. We expect that we will coordinate our actions. In Europe, we are also coordinating with certain states to ensure Europe's interests are protected and to prevent the destabilization around Iran from leading to increased problems in Europe.
For now, it is only a matter of sending Ukrainians to Jordan to guard American bases. However, it is likely that over time, Ukraine's assistance will be scaled up. Volodymyr Zelensky has reported that there are already 11 requests from Iran's neighboring countries, European states, and America for assistance in countering Iranian drones. The goal is noble, but such assistance also carries risks. The main concern is whether we are weakening our own defense capability with these actions. And this risk does indeed exist. But we also cannot abandon the countries of the Middle East. Firstly, it is thanks to the countries of the Persian Gulf that prisoner exchanges are taking place. And Ukraine will not forget this assistance. But secondly, it is time to move beyond statements of deep concern and start helping through action. Who, if not Ukrainians, know how important this is?
It is crucial to recognize and understand that our war is a fundamentally new kind of war. And our experience in this conflict is truly unique. And if we appeal to the fact that we are fighting against a pervasive and global force of evil, and that other countries should be much more deeply involved in our war, both in terms of immediate military assistance and long-term future investments, then, of course, we must demonstrate the comprehensive and global nature of our strategic thinking. And it is precisely in such complex matters that this perspective is clearly revealed.
Altruism is far from the only reason for sending Ukrainian specialists from anti-drone systems. There is also a pragmatic side to this coin. In the future, such assistance could turn into income for Ukraine. The Persian Gulf countries are nations with a lot of money, and
they have come to the stark realization that the various specialized Russian military systems designed for fighting drones, specifically those intended for controlling the lower airspace, such as the Pantsir surface-to-air missile system, have ultimately proven to be significantly and notably insufficiently effective in these modern combat environments. And this represents a significant and timely opportunity for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to definitively move away from and finally abandon these sophisticated yet expensive Russian military systems. But reflections
about the future are not so comforting when the threat looms right now. Hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles fly toward Ukraine every day. While Ukraine has learned to counter UAVs, dealing with ballistic missiles remains a serious challenge for Ukrainian defense capabilities. Everything depends on the help of Western allies. If you look at the statistics for the use of Patriot missiles compared to the Middle East, the numbers are far from encouraging. According to official data provided by the President's office, Kyiv has received only 600 missiles for this American air defense system during the entire war. Meanwhile, in just the first days of the war in Iran, Middle Eastern countries used more than 800 Patriot missiles. And perhaps assistance in fighting drones in the Middle East will help Ukraine receive more missiles for its air defense systems. The more
drones are shot down by our interceptors, and with the help of our knowledge, with the help of our technologies, the more we can claim a greater number of Patriots.
Official Kyiv also expects that in exchange for assistance, Middle Eastern countries will provide diplomatic support in pushing Russia toward a ceasefire.
Various nations throughout the Middle East possess a significant amount of strategic leverage over the Russian elites. It is important to remember that their immediate families, their luxury real estate, their financial capital, and their diverse businesses are all officially registered and located within those specific countries. In particular, for example, in Qatar, in the United Arab Emirates, in other words, Russians are present there. And for a long time, this has been a discreet and peaceful sanctuary for Russian business, for the illicit laundering of vast sums of money, and for the formal process of legitimizing any and all foreign purchases.
The countries of the Persian Gulf can help put pressure on the Russian Federation not only out of gratitude, but also because they have become unofficial adversaries of Russia. The terrorist state is once again taking up its favorite position. While Ukrainians are going to help defend, Russians are helping to attack. According to the president of Ukraine, there is information that Russians are providing intelligence to Iran to help adjust strikes against Americans. In addition, Russian components are being found in Iranian Shahids. And now,
to continue on this topic, U.S. intelligence reports that Beijing may provide financial support to Iran and supply it with missile components. In this segment, we will tell you more about this criminal scheme and how it affects the course of the war in the Middle East. Iran
has gained another ally against the United States. China is likely preparing to transfer spare parts and components for missiles to Tehran, as well as provide financial assistance, according to US intelligence services. Although publicly, Beijing calls for a diplomatic resolution of the situation in the Middle East.
This is not about the possible transfer of missile technology, but about the possibility of transferring the S-300 system to Iran, of Russian and Soviet manufacture, which is in service with the People's Liberation Army of China. 38 S-300 divisions. Moreover, I do not rule out the possibility that Iran will act as a transit country for the further transfer of these surface-to-air missile systems to enhance the capabilities of Russian air defense, primarily for the protection of strategic facilities, first and foremost on the territory of the Russian Federation itself.
However, Beijing is acting with great caution in its support of Tehran against the backdrop of the US and Israeli military operation against the Ayatollah regime. China wants the war to end because it threatens energy supplies. Beijing imports about 45% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz.
China currently stands as one of the very largest global end consumers of Iranian crude oil, and accordingly, the specific price of this oil, which is presently being quoted on the volatile world markets at approximately $109 per barrel. This is first and foremost a blow to the Chinese economy. China fully understands that any further escalation of hostilities in the Persian Gulf, even for just a month, could lead to enormous consequences for the Chinese economy.
Earlier, Reuters reported that Tehran is close to purchasing Chinese missiles, which pose a threat to the US Navy. Specifically, these are Chinese-made SM-302 anti-ship cruise missiles. In the 1980s, China was the main supplier of weapons to Iran, but under pressure from the international community, large-scale deliveries had decreased by the late 1990s. In recent years, American officials have accused Chinese companies of supplying Tehran with materials related to its missile program, but have not publicly stated that ready-made missile systems were being delivered.
Iran's missile program is primarily based on Chinese technologies and Chinese specialists. China provides Iran with extensive military technical assistance, both in terms of transferring missile technologies and accordingly specialists to help create its own missile complex.
Currently, Beijing does not want to escalate tensions with Washington. This year could be decisive for US-China relations, stated Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. On March 31st, the US president will begin a 3-day visit to China, the first since 2017. The last time Donald Trump and Xi Jinping met was in October 2025 at a summit in South Korea.
The United States is well aware of the increased dangers posed by the People's Republic of China. For its part, the government of China is acutely and completely aware of the fact that if aggressive or confrontational language and rhetoric is used in its diplomatic relations with the United States, there will be an instantaneous and forceful retaliatory response from Donald Trump and the various members of the White House administration in the specific form of what are commonly known as double sanctions. In the specific event that it should happen, if
Beijing acts cautiously in its relations with Iran, while Russia provides assistance openly. The Iranian foreign minister stated that cooperation between Tehran and Moscow continues and is not a secret. The Russian
Federation uses so-called controlled leaks of information about intelligence sharing primarily as an element of military political pressure on the United States. The point is that the Russian Federation is signaling that they are ready to stop intelligence sharing with Iran in exchange for a ban on intelligence sharing between the United States and the Ukrainian intelligence community.
By the way, Iran and Russia have signed a secret agreement for the supply of 500 modern Verba surface-to-air missile systems and missiles for them over the course of 3 years, according to the Financial Times. World sports continues to hit new lows. After the return of Russian symbols to the Olympics, what was bound to happen sooner or later finally occurred. For the first time since 2014, not only did the Russian tricolor appear at the Paralympics, but the Russian anthem was also played. I have no words. The Ukrainian authorities criticized the decision of the International Paralympic Committee. The Ukrainian team boycotted the opening of the Paralympics. That's all for now. Please like this video and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. See you next time.